This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
Namaskar, Sat Sri Akal, welcome and adab. You are listening to Bharat FM, a one-of-its-kind, multilingual, eclectic provider of entertainment, information and news to Indian Americans. Headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, Bharat FM airs shows out of Cincinnati, Chicago and Phoenix. We take pleasure in our ability to cater to your bhakti, chusti, sfurti, shakti and masti needs with our audio and visual shows. Check out bharatfm.com for our online program schedule and archives. I'm sure the content will definitely tickle your senses. Tune in via the 24-hour web streaming on bharatfm.com or via the Bharat FM app. More information can be procured at 513-488-5070.
All right. Good evening, everybody. How are you doing? How is everybody in India? I know in some of the cities the lockdown has been extended, but I'm sure we are all limping back to some kind of sanity, right? I'm your host, Usha Venkatraman. I host Storytellers Cafe on Bharat FM every Sunday at 9 p.m. Indian Standard Time and 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. So a very warm Sunday good morning to all the viewers in the United States. Welcome to Storytellers Cafe. As you know, the USP of Storytellers Cafe is to tell stories. And there is also one more information that I would like to share with you all. Storytellers Cafe completes 1 year this June. On the 28th of June, 2020, Storytellers Cafe was launched by me on Bharat FM. And how the year has flown past by us. You know, it's been just a wonderful journey of presenting to you stellar storytellers from India and from around the world, Indian storytellers to the global Indian diaspora. It's been my pleasure. So, this anniversary month, I have a wonderful lineup of storytellers. Sit back, listen to the stories, and let's navigate through these difficult times by listening to stories from Ithihasa, folk tales, wonder tales, and many other stories, because these stories guide us during these difficult times. I just want to sing one line of this song. दीवारें ऊंची है गलियां है तंग लंबी डगर है पर हिम्मत है संग पाँव पे छाले हैं सांसें बुलंद लड़ने चली हूँ आजादी की जंग. We are not fighting for our freedom, friends. We are fighting for our sanity, health, and well being. And what better way to navigate through these difficult times than by listening to some wonderful stories? So, my guest for today, is from the wonderful, wonderful city of Chennai. I come from South India. So, Vanakkam to all the viewers from Chennai. My guest is Asha Sampath, who is an educator turned storyteller. Asha Sampath believes in the magical power of stories to connect, communicate, and transform. Asha has presented stories and held workshops at storytelling festivals in India, Thailand, and Malaysia. Featured on radio, television, and newspaper articles, Asha has also contributed articles and stories in magazines, online publications, and a book which dealt with telling stories to special children. Today, I invite all my listeners and viewers to listen to Asha narrate two stories from Ithihasa, from our Indian mythology and scriptures. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring Asha onto our studios and just enjoy the magical stories that she is going to weave for us. Welcome, Asha.
Thank you so much, Usha. Namaste to everybody.
Namaskaram. So, Asha, can we start with your story? Friends, I just want to say I've known Asha for the last 10 years. And, as storytellers, we listen to each other's stories. And I'm sure I too have grown and, become a better storyteller today than where I was 10 years back. And you listen to Asha weaving these two beautiful mythical stories from the Indian Ithihasa, and you can vouch for it. So, Asha Sampath, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Usha. So, the first story I'm going to be sharing with all of you is about Indra, the great battle between Indra, the god of rain, and Vritra, the dragon of drought. Indra, the king of gods, also known as Devendra, was powerful. He was mighty and he was the strongest of all the gods. No wonder he became their king. You know, in the Rig Veda, there are over 250 verses dedicated to this god, the god of thunder, lightning, rain, and water, basically. Now, Indra lived his life, well, king size. Indra had a reddish golden skin and he dyed his hair yellow. Cool, huh? Even then, they did dye their hair. And I bet Indra visited the heavenly gym every day to exercise when he was not running off to do battles. He was also probably very fashion conscious, wearing the latest from his fashion designers in clothes or the ornaments. And Indra, oh, he loved to ride on his magnificent four-tusked elephant, Airavata. He wielded the weapon Vajrayudha, about which we shall know more in the story. Indra also loved to feast, party, and drink. He must have had the best of the delicacies in the heavenly realm, don't you think? And he just loved his soma juice, that drink. He would go glug, 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 slurp, slurp, sip, sip. Just like you and I like our Coke with our pizza and our hamburger, Indra loved to have his soma juice anywhere, everywhere, anytime. But for all his perfect lifestyle, Indra was not a perfect being. In fact, he was arrogant, he was proud, he was reckless, rash, and he had a very short temper. He did unspeakable and unthinkable acts which landed him and the Devas in big trouble. This story also was because of an unthinking act by him. In a fit of rage one day, Indra killed the son of Twashta, the heavenly craftsman. Twashta was also known as the Shaper. Of course, Twashta was infuriated. He was so filled with anger that he decided to perform a sacrifice, a yajna, to vanquish Indra. Many sages joined him because they had either been humiliated or insulted by Indra, and more importantly, they felt this was a very just cause and Indra needed to be vanquished. As the flames of the yajna grew into the air, licking it, out from the middle of the flames rose a black, terrible looking dragon. Its eyes were fiery, and it roared and bellowed as it emerged from the fire. Vritra, the dragon of drought, was formed. He stood in front of Twashta, waiting for his command. You shall go and vanquish Indra, thundered Twashta. The dragon snaked its way over the earth, wondering how he would call Indra to battle. Ah, I know what to do, he said to himself. He swallowed all the waters on the earth, built 99 impregnable fortresses, and stored the water behind the 99th fortress. And he waited. The earth was parched, drought-ridden. The people were miserable and in anguish. They cried to Indra, the Lord of the rains, to help them. Indra heard the plea, and he came racing down, challenging Vritra to a battle. That's what Vritra was waiting for. Oh, a battle took place. Dhum ta-na-na-na-na-na, dhum ta-na-na-na-na-na, dhum ta-na-na-na-na-na, dhum, 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 dhum. But Vritra was much too strong for Indra. He even broke Indra's jaws. And there was a time when Vritra swallowed Indra whole and just vomited him out as if he was waste material. Indra knew he could not beat Vritra. And so he did the only thing possible at that point in time. He ran. Oh, he fled the battle and went and hid himself. Vritra roared in joy, and he occupied Devaloka, the heavenly kingdom. Now, as it always happens, whenever Indra and the Devas were in big trouble, it was super god, peacekeeper Vishnu who was called upon to help. And as Indra stood shamefacedly in front of super god Vishnu, Vishnu said, "What have you done this time, Indra? Every time you land yourself and the Devas in big trouble, I have to play the peacekeeper simply because I need to keep the balance of the world. Man, you are one troublesome god." So, with a sigh, super god Vishnu went to the sages and he discussed with them. Finally, he brokered a truce with the sages. Vritra had to be killed because creation had to be balanced. Indra came and apologized profusely to the sages. The sages said, "Okay, but you know what? You cannot kill Vritra with your, fancy heavenly weapons." And Indra said, "What? Then how can I kill him?" And the sages smiled at each other. They said, well, you need to fashion a weapon out of the bones of a very pious being. Only with that weapon can you kill this dragon of trout. So Indra and the Devas immediately looked at the sages and said, but you are all pious beings. Can't one of you, donate your bones? Now, how could anyone donate one's bones without dying? And no sage was interested in dying for Indra. They said, ha, we can't do that. We've given you the solution and we have agreed to super god Vishnu's truce. That's it. You got to go and find somebody who's pious and who's willing to give up his body. And they turned off. Indra and the Devas went here and there, up and down. And they searched long and hard. Finally, they chanced upon that generous, kind, and wise sage, Dadichi. When Dadichi heard about this problem, he immediately agreed. He said, for the good of creation and to maintain balance in the heavens and in the world, I am willing to give up my body. After all, I have lived a long life on this earth. And so, just like that, Dadichi gave up his body. Immediately, the Devas fashioned a weapon out of his bones, and that weapon was Vajrayudha. Now, with renewed power, energy, and the backing of so many people behind him, Indra challenged Vritra to battle. Vritra came happily, joyfully, thinking that he would win this time too. The battle continued for 360 days. That's like 5 days short of a year. This time, Indra had the upper hand. He threw Vritra down on the 360th day, and as his body came crashing down, it completely destroyed the 99 fortresses, and water rushed and gushed over a parched earth. That accomplished, Indra now wielded the Vajrayudha and pierced Vritra with a terrifying sound. Vritra lay dead. Oh, there was much celebration in the heavens and on earth, and people danced with joy. Tataya, tataya, ho. Balance in creation was restored. Tataya, tataya, ho.
What a lovely story, Asha. Balance on earth was restored. That's what we need. There is imbalance, and I don't want to go into the analysis of what has caused this pandemic, but what an appropriate story and story for our times. How can we restore balance? Muriel Rukeyser said that. If we want to restore the earth, we need to restory ourselves. So I think today the need of the hour is to restory ourselves, our narratives. And you have beautifully narrated this story for us, which should, keep everyone thinking and wonder in ways that we can, we can bring the balance back on this earth. Thank you for that story. Asha. Beautiful. I know
Thank
you just plunged into the story, and that's how I would like the session to begin. So, now, Asha, welcome to Storytellers Cafe. It's a pleasure to have you. And what's your story? How did you become a storyteller?
Well, personal stories are always interesting, Usha, as you very well know. My journey was by chance. When we relocated to Chennai, um, I kind of wanted to do something more creative rather than just be a teacher. So I was looking for avenues and opportunities, and a chance advertisement uh, uh, in a paper about a storyteller kind of caught my eye, and I looked up on the internet, and then I saw so many articles on storytelling, and I said, wow, this is a lovely field. And I was reminded about my childhood days when my granny used to tell us such awesome stories. So there was an instant connect. I signed up for a course in storytelling, and I learned so much. And then there's been no looking back. I think I started the journey, yeah, way back in 2012. Ever since, I think that's when I also met you. So, yeah, so
Yes,
it's been a
yes.
wonderful journey.
Absolutely. I completely endorse your thoughts on storytelling. It's a beautiful journey of self discovery, of expression,
Yeah,
and like I said, navigating through difficult times.
very.
Stories are very therapeutic, and even to oneself. Certain stories, I like to listen to some my own stories because they come knocking on my shoulder and say, remember, Usha, that story that you told. And I think it's time you listen to it again. So it offers me comfort, solace, and sometimes guidance as well. So, Asha, I know you've been wonderful. You have traveled to other countries representing India at storytelling festivals, and then I know that after this meteoric rise, you took a sabbatical, and then have been keeping in the background, which is perfectly fine because to uh, even I find it very difficult to be one with the Joneses, and the social media is so encroaching and sometimes very disruptive and also intrusive in your life, that you like to stay away and do what you do best. And I know that you've been continuing to tell stories. I have also come across your article where you did a beautiful story on the sari. It was a narrative about. So I saw that, and I read about it in the American school, because it came in their magazine, if I'm not mistaken. What is the name of the magazine? Can you tell us about it? Yes.
That's so nice of you. Culturama is the name of the magazine, and uh, like everything in life, and especially good things happen by chance. This again, I owe so much to stories and the journey. I'm really humbled by where stories have taken me and continue to take me. Now, a friend who runs a boutique approached me once and asked me if I could tell a story, in her boutique for an exclusive audience. It just came out of the blue. And that's when I started thinking, instead of telling any other story, a boutique, and her family specializes in saris printing wonderful designs, and they have their own weaving unit in a place, I think Kanchipuram in Tamil Nadu. And I thought I should tell a story on saris. So she was very delighted when she heard that I would be sharing a story on saris. So I did a little bit of research that has to be done, I feel, by every storyteller when you are especially working on a story and trying to get the best out of the story to your audience, and especially in this case, Sari. So I went into history and references in, other books, even in a little bit in the Vedas, and so all those kind of sources, and that's what makes story even more interesting, actually. So um, it kind of opens up another realm of information. I wouldn't know so much about the sari at all if I had not researched into it. And then I created that story, and it was enjoyable not only to me scripting it and narrating it, but the audience loved it. And one of the members in the audience was an editor of that magazine, and she approached me and she asked, "Hey Asha, can I have this? I really like your story, and would you mind, getting it published?" And yeah, that's how it came about in the magazine. Thank you so much. I really didn't know you had come across that story, so that comes
Uh,
as a very pleasant surprise. Thank
No,
you.
no, that's wonderful because I was for some time working at the American school, and I used to read Culturama. It's a beautiful,
Oh,
beautiful
yeah, very nice.
magazine, which is depicting about Indian culture and art and traditions. And then I saw that, and I've been maybe I did ask you, but I don't remember. But today I know the story behind that article. So fantastic. That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
That's what we storytellers do. You can narrate about anything. And I personally love these boutique exclusive storytelling. More and more, I've been doing that before the pandemics began for
Oh,
exclusive groups, which I really enjoy. Enjoy telling stories to adults and also to a very small group. So that's lovely. So, Asha, tell us about if there is anything that stands out in your storytelling career, your visits to international festivals, and what kind of stories you prefer, you know. What's your favorite story, so to say, the genre?
um, well, I continue to be a learner, and every trip that I have made abroad, and every session that I have attended, be it the workshop which I did recently attend, I learn. I learn every time I listen to a storyteller, watch a storytelling session, attend a workshop. And I am even more humble because there is so much more to learn. There is no ceiling to learning. So that is a big humbling factor for me, and I hope I continue to learn from the storytellers. And I always remember that this rich tradition um, has been going on for centuries throughout the world because somebody back there in the ages told stories, and it continued to carry on. So I would use the word humble for want of a better word. I'm really humble that in a very small way I am contributing to that oral tradition, a very rich tradition. So that's what keeps me going. Coming to the kind of categories or genre of stories that I like, I think you will agree with me, like every other storyteller, a story that connects with you. It's more for me, rather than I connecting to the story, it's the story kind of tells me to tell it, I don't know any other way to put it. It just speaks to me, and it says, take me out there and put me out in the world if you can, kind. So that's the kind of a feeling. When you read plenty of stories, I might read about 10 stories in a day, and probably one or not even one, would connect with me. And I'd say, no, I want this for a topic I'm researching, and please connect. There are times I've sent out the prayer out there. I said, please give me a story. And there have been days when I have, I think, 3 or 4 days trying to just get that right story. But ultimately, I do get the story. And, I love telling stories from Ithihasa because it says, um, the Sanskritam word itself means thus it happened. So it did happen is the belief that I go in with stories from Ithihasa and folk tales, of course, because they have been carried by communities, by people. And I also love historical stories of great legends. I think pretty much about anything, even some contemporary stories that really connect. Like I said, when the story connects with me, I really want to show it out into the world. So I think there's no one particular uh, kind of story I like, anything that connects with.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Asha. Stories have to connect with you before you share it with others. And our stories from the Indian scriptures or from mythology or Itihasa have so much wisdom. Like, I was listening to your story. It's the story of water. It's a story of drought. It's a story of also Indra, being terrorized by Vritta, and also Dadichi. I think Dadichi's reference comes in Bhagavatam, if I'm not mistaken, because when you mentioned him, immediately it connected with Bhagavatam, and such a wealth of knowledge. These stories are like framed narratives. One story leads into another story and then another story, and that's the beauty of our stories from Itihasa. Yes. So, Asha, moving on, I know you have another wonderful story for our listeners. So, can we have you talk to us a little bit about that and then begin your story?
Sure. The second story I would like to share with you is about how Garuda saves his mother. Uh, this is a story I did refer to again, um, a lot of sources, and mainly from the Mahabharata. So here goes how Garuda saves his mother. Vinata sat in front of that big egg. Definitely, the egg was cracking. Crack, crack, crack. The egg split open, and there was a blinding flash of brilliant, radiant light that went right up to the heavens. Now, the gods, devas, were sitting in court, and when they perceived this light, everybody turned to Agni, the god of fire, and they said, dude, you are the god of fire and the brightest one in creation. What is this brighter than you? Agni smiled and said, that is the birth of Garuda, who will be the king of birds. Back on earth, Vinata looked fascinated as from that radiance emerged a magnificent being, bird-like human. Oh, he had a golden body, keen, sharp eyes, and a beautifully curved, sharp beak in place of the human nose. Behind those strong, broad shoulders were two wings folded and kept. For nails, he had talons on his hands and feet. Vinata was overjoyed. Her prayer to have a strong son had been granted. But for all this brilliant birth, Garuda was born into slavery because his mother Vinata was a slave to her cunning sister Kadru, who was the mother of 1,000 serpents. All because Vinata had lost a pet to her sister. Now, day after day, week after week, month after month, Garuda saw his mother working, being overworked, and his heart broke. All day through, all Vinata did was work, 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 working away, mopping and swabbing, cleaning and dusting, cooking and inging, this thing and that thing. Garuda didn't care if he was humiliated or insulted by his serpent cousins, but he just could not bear his mother's suffering. Oh, what can I do? What can I do to release my mother from slavery? This thought kept on in his mind day and night. One day, Kadru and her serpent sons decided to go for a picnic in a faraway island. Vinata had to carry Kadru all the way to that island on her back, while Garuda had to carry his serpent cousins, 1,000 of them, on his back. Once they landed there, even then, Vinata had no rest. She was put to work. Garuda was pained beyond words. And he just went up to his serpent cousins and he said, "Hey, what can I do to release my mother from this bondage and slavery?" he inquired of them. The serpents hissed and slithered and discussed. And then they told Garuda, "If you could get us that pot of Amrit, the heavenly nectar, drinking which everybody becomes immortal and super strong, then we shall release your mother." That's it. Without a second's hesitation, Garuda opened his wings, flapped them, and up, up, and away he flew towards the heavens with just that one focus in his mind. Bring that pot of Amrit and release Mama. When the Devas and Indra especially heard of Garuda coming, no, this can't be happening, this can't be happening. They knew how strong Garuda was, but then Amrit, that golden pot, was precious. It was rare, and nobody could ever lay a finger on it or drink it. It was the right of the gods alone. And they had to protect that by all means. So the Devas amassed a large army and waited for Garuda. When Garuda saw this huge army and the Devas waiting to battle it out, he became angry. He flapped his wings ferociously until a dust storm came up. And the soldiers and the Devas had dust everywhere, dust in their eyes, dust up their nose, dust in their mouth, dust in their ears, dust on their head, and in between the hairs, dust on their dress. Oh, it was so dusty. The more the army tried to move forward, the more they were pushed back because of the force of the dust storm. And since they could not see, hear, or speak, they were always bumping into each other, falling over, and they were devastated, and they were all astray. Garuda did not spare them. He pounced on them and he pierced them, and he took his talons and he tore at them until the army and the devas scattered in fear. When the ground was clear, with hardly any of the devas or the soldiers, Garuda made his way to fetch that pot of gold with the heavenly nectar Amrit in it. Now, as much as a museum holds its precious artifacts and treasures under a very sound security system, this precious treasure was also heavily guarded. 3 lines of defense, excellent security system in place, or so the Devas thought. The first line of defense that Garuda encountered was a raging flame all around that pot of Amrit somewhere inside. Garuda took one look, and then in the blink and the wink of an eye, he came right down to earth, opened his beak, swallowed as much water as he could, and in the wink and the blink of an eye, he was back in the heavens, dousing that fire. After all, nobody was there to challenge him, right? So the first line of defense was broken. He advanced to the second line of defense. Now, this was an even tougher one to crack. There was this huge metallic wheel that went round and round. All along its border and within, everywhere that you could see, were razor-sharp blades. You could not get through that without being jabbed, pierced, slashed, and done for. But Garuda waited. There has to be a flaw. There has to be a flaw, he thought. And he watched as the wheel rotated. His keen eyes spotted the only flaw in that wheel. There was a tiny, narrow passage that he saw. Of course, he was a magical being, and so he shrunk himself in size. And just at the precise moment when the wheel with the narrow passage came in front of him, he zoomed right through it. He'd broken the second line of defense. Aha! I've done. He couldn't complete the word with it, the sentence with it, because right in front of him were these 2 huge serpents hissing with fiery eyes and spewing poison. Serpents. You and I already know Garuda did not like serpents. This sight of these 2 serpents really enraged him so much, he kind of lost it. And he went into a frenzy. He came back to his original size, and he began to pierce and mangle these 2 serpents until they lay dead at his feet. That was it. The final circle of defense was broken. Garuda sped towards that shining golden pot of Amrit. Without a second's hesitation, he picked it up in his hands, and now with all his might and strength, he broke through that metal wheel and began to make his way fast towards the earth. Mama's going to be free! Mama's going to be free! That thought kept him going, and he just wanted to race. But to his utter surprise, blocking his way was super god peacekeeper Vishnu. He wouldn't dare bypass the super god. So he stopped holding that pot of nectar in his hand. Now, Vishnu was mighty pleased with Garuda because Garuda had just not been tempted to even taste the nectar for which people were willing to give up their lives or fight a battle. This kid was too good, thought Vishnu. I ought to give him a boon. And that's what he told Garuda. Hey, Garuda, I am so impressed with you, kid. I'm so impressed that you were not even tempted to taste this heavenly nectar. So I want to grant you a boon. And Garuda, in his mind, was thinking, it is getting on. I need to go and give my mom, give the Nagas the spot of nectar and get my mom out of their clutches. And Super God is not letting me go. But then he waited. And Vishnu waited. And he said, oh, I need to ask for a boon. Oh gosh. And so he did the first thing that came to his mind. That's what he blurted out. And he said, I would like to always stay above you, Super God Vishnu. Vishnu smiled and said, granted, you will always be at the top of my flag post. That way you will always stay above me. Wonderful, said Garuda. And in his mind he thought, now may I please go, Super God? Not so fast. Vishnu said, you know what? I am so pleased with you. I am going to grant you an extra boon even without you asking me. I am going to grant you the gift of immortality and freedom from all diseases. Oh, that's super gracious of you. Thank you. Will you let me go? No. Vishnu said, you know what? I like you so much, Garuda, that I want you to do me a favor. Garuda now was taken aback. Why was Super God asking him for a favor? So he waited. And Vishnu said, Garuda, I would like for you to become my mount, my vehicle. Ah, that thrilled Garuda to no end. Imagine being the mount of Super God Vishnu. Of course, he was thrilled. And he said, yes, I will do it, my lord. But now may I please go to my mother? This time, Vishnu laughed and he said, yes, you may, my child. Go along. So Garuda raced, and he was so happy he would be there in no time when there was a being right in front of his path, blocking his way with outstretched arms. It was none other than Indra. What do you want? Said Garuda. And Indra said, hey, buddy, I know we can't defeat you. I would like for you to be on our side. Let us become friends, allies, And Garuda looked at Indra. Indra continued, Garuda, you see, this pot of Amrit belongs only in the heavens. It cannot fall into anyone else's hand. You know that, don't you? If you give it to the Nagas, they will drink it. And there will be endless fighting in the world. The balance in creation will be destroyed. Please listen to my words and do not give them the spot of Amrit. Garuda saw the wisdom in Indra's words and he agreed. And so between the two of them, they plotted to trick the Nagas. As Garuda now raced towards the earth and his mother, Indra followed behind. When Garuda reached the Nagas, Indra hid behind. When the Nagas saw this pot of Amrit, in Garuda's hands. Oh, they hissed and they slithered, and I'm sure they did that little snake dance, which probably had music like this. Na 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 na. And then they asked Garuda to give them that pot of nectar. But Garuda stopped the advance of the serpents and he said, "Hey, you guys, you know this is a very sacred pot, and the nectar is even more sacred. How could you touch it with your unclean hands and bodies? You better go and have a wash. Have a thorough wash, and then you can come and taste this nectar." What do you say? For the first time in their lives, the serpents listened to Garuda's words. And Garuda said, "Look, I'm going to place this pot of nectar on this patch of kusa grass. You can come and lick away all the nectar once you're done with your bathing." They hissed, the serpents. Oh, they hissed. They were happy. They were joyous. And when the last of them had made his way towards the waters, Indra came from his hiding, took the pot of Amrit, looked at Garuda and said, "Hey, buddy, how can I return this big favor?" Garuda looked at the way the serpents had taken, and he said, "Just let me and my ilk feast on the serpents. Let them be our food." And Indra said, "You got it." Garuda took his mother. Oh, how happy that mother was. Garuda disappeared with his mother, and Indra disappeared with the pot of Amrit. The pot of Amrit went back to its rightful place, and Garuda had saved his.
Thank you, Asha. Thank you. What a wonderful epic story. The story addresses so many things, the eating habits of eagles and their, they love snakes, as we know. And Garuda is the mighty, mighty eagle, right? If I'm not mistaken, or the
Yes,
mighty. Yes, and also the Vahan of the vehicle of Vishnu, the super god, and beautiful story of rescuing his mother and also finding the pot of elixir, pot of Amrit.
yes,
Beautiful story. Every time I listen to stories from, I would say, mythology or Ithihasa, as you are calling it, I mean, and that's the right word. There is so much to learn, and there is so much wisdom. Again, this story is about bringing balance to earth, taking away the greed of people, and then uh, kind of giving the elixir or the pot of amridam to the right people, to the right owners, so that you don't play around with it, or the sanctity of what that elixir is all about. Wonderful story, Asha. Asha Sampath told these two stories at the CSMVS Museum last Sunday. And when I heard her, I said, this story should be heard by all the viewers and listeners of Storytellers Cafe, because that is what Storytellers Cafe is all about, stories. And to listen to certain unheard of stories. This is a story not many would have come into I don't know whether you know about it, because this is a little out of the ordinary, than your Ramayana and Mahabharata and Bhagavad stories. So thank you, Asha, that was wonderful. And it was a pleasure listening to you weave these two magical tales. And do you have anything to tell our listeners before you leave the studios?
yeah. It's what I would like for the listeners to do is please delve into your own stories, into your own cultural stories, because there's so much of wealth and wisdom, especially in it, like Usha rightly pointed out at the beginning. So there are folk tales. There is so much. Every country, every community, every tribe has so many stories. And please do read stories, and you will be amazed at the treasures that come out of that treasure box called stories. Like she said, unheard of stories. And please do listen, read, and share stories. And everybody, I believe, is a storyteller. All we have to do is just tell the story so that it travel all around the world and continue to remain with us. So thank you so much, Usha. I want to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your first anniversary. I have been listening to you and the other storytellers on this platform, the Storytellers Cafe. It's a wonderful initiative, like all of your initiatives are. And thank you so much for bringing me onto this platform. Thank you so much for letting all of us listen to so many storytellers and such wonderful stories. And I wish you many more years of success. So thank you very much. Namaste to you and namaste to the audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asha. It's our pleasure to host you. And like I said, Storytellers Cafe's USP is to listen to stories. So this is your host, Usha Venkatraman, on Storytellers Cafe. Like Asha said, and like I also said in the beginning, Storytellers Cafe is completing 1 year. On June 28th, we would have completed 1 year. So this month, we have wonderful storytellers for you. Next Sunday is another lovely storyteller from Bangalore, another good friend of mine, and I met her along with Asha in 2012. So stay tuned at 9 p.m. and listen to stories which will help you navigate through these difficult times. Believe you me, that is the magic elixir. Please sit back and listen. Thank you. Good night. And have a great day for all the listeners in the United States. And this is us, Usha and Asha, signing off. See you next Sunday.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.